Let's go for predicate.
I need my laptop here, or?
No, your slides.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Hey, everyone. How are you guys doing? All right. So first up, I think we have to define and think about the world as it is today and where it goes, right? So I'm sure many of you guys share this view that blockchains will become the global financial settlement system. This was me pulling the numbers from last night. I don't know how it's changed. I haven't looked at the markets this morning, but hopefully it's same, if not a little bit higher. But the point is generally that you actually see a significant amount of growth in digital assets over the last, even over the last year. You're seeing record amounts of, from a market cap standpoint, stablecoins really does seem to be the real fundamental use case for blockchains, right? This is something we've always talked about, but you're actually seeing that adoption. Not only in crypto world, but you're seeing that happen through fintechs and financial institutions as well. And then, of course, you have real world assets and DeFi itself. So all this means that we are really going into a world where blockchains do become a global financial settlement system. And privacy is critical to that, right? We cannot have a world in which all of our financial activity as a user is fully revealed. But same for any organization, they also cannot have everything be disclosed publicly for a number of reasons, right? From a business execution standpoint, for payroll, they can't have all of their employees see how much everyone is making. A business can't show how much are they paying their different vendors publicly, both to their other vendors as well as their competitors. You could pretty much backtrack their entire financial position through things like that. So in this case now, we say privacy is critical, right? But what that also means is you're also engaging and interacting across regulated markets. Users are coming in from regulated markets, and businesses, of course, exist and operate in regulated markets. So the question then is how do you incorporate compliance into that to be able to scale into the global economy? And really the question is why compliance, right? It's because developers and organizations that operate in regulated markets have to think about their business requirements, such as, they don't want to reveal everything, but they have to ensure that they're not, sending money to someone who's malicious or receiving money from a malicious actor. There's, of course, regulations and security. So to make this even a little bit more tangible, what I think about here is, you and I will all go buy a pair of shoes. But when we go buy a pair of shoes, we don't go to a back alley and say, oh, I'm going to go and buy a pair of shoes from something that was clearly stolen, right? We actually don't want to do that. We usually go to a store and say, let me buy a pair of shoes. So again, this is where compliance does matter. And so this is really what we see, right? So this is what the purpose of Predicate is we build policy infrastructure for privacy solutions. And core to this is that we believe that Ethereum should be credibly neutral. None of this should be enforced at the Ethereum core protocol level. But rather, you are building financial solutions that sit on top, privacy solutions that sit on top. And so in that case, you need policy infrastructure to be able to power that. And so really then it's that policies control how transactions flow in financial systems. That's historically how it's always worked, and that's really what the view that we take as well. All right, so how does this work? Quite simple. It's not too complex, actually. So you have a financial application or a privacy application in this case. You have a predicate API. So in this case, they request the predicate API to issue a signature saying, hey, this transaction that's about to go through, let's say someone wants to enter into a privacy system, is it compliant or not? And if it is, predicate issues a signature, an attestation in sub-second latency. Basically, we have an off-chain compute system that validates the transaction, says, does this adhere to the requirements? If so, yes, we issue a signature. Then when the user is submitting the transaction, that signature is embedded in the transaction object. The user is never going to really realize this. We should not be fundamentally changing the user experience. It should be very, very consistent with what they already have. So they go through, they don't realize it, but they have a signature embedded in the transaction object through predicate. So they then hit submit. The transaction only goes through the smart contract if there is a signature from predicate. If there isn't, the transaction can't go through. So what this means is we are actually creating mechanisms to have compliance enforcement at a smart contract level for various applications, right? So a transaction can only go through if it has a signature from predicate. We attest to whether something is compliant or not, and it is enforced at a smart contract level. And then lastly, the signatures are validated on-chain through the predicate contracts. So I'm going to have one slightly more abstract slide, and then I'm going to go into like a few tangible examples of this. So what this means is when you think about policies in this architecture is you're allowed to do smart contract level enforcement in which transactions only execute per defined settings. Fully observable, right? So you can see in real time if they're going through, if they're not going through, why they're going through, why they're not. The other part is it's one integration. So you're going to need to incorporate, when we really get into the incredibly boring parts of compliance for everyone here, you have to think about a number of different data points, on-chain and off-chain. This is zero knowledge proofs, this is off-chain data, this is proprietary data, any of those things. It's really how do we have a unified mechanism to be able to do all of that. And then lastly, it should be programmable, right? You incorporate this once, you should not have to update your smart contracts every time. If something changes for your business or regulation changes, you should be able to update that. It should be programmable without having to make any dramatic changes to your infrastructure. All right, so let's make this now even more concrete. So IntMax is a privacy L2 on Ethereum. They need to ensure that malicious actors can't enter into their privacy system. And so the way this works is it's in their deposit contract. So anyone who's going to go and deposit, that predicate is essentially used to verify that those funds are not coming from a major exploit or coming in from a major instance of terrorist financing or human trafficking. So when a person's about to deposit, this is verified by predicate. And here we use a multitude of different data inputs for that. So for example, TRM, which is a blockchain analytics provider. There are various custom other data sources that we use. And these are, of course, all defined by IntMax. A crucial part here, right, is that you have to have a number of automated redundancies because you can say, hey, look, TRM is right there. Isn't that, if there's a Cloudflare issue or an AWS outage, what happens? Are you basically stopping every transaction into IntMax? And that's where this is really important in the way that this is designed, is it should have auto capabilities to incorporate a number of other data pieces. If TRM goes down, if there's a major outage in the world, you should have various points of input. And again, this is where you incorporate custom blacklists as well that use much more on-chain infrastructure. So that's IntMax. Now I'm going to talk about one, Aleo. Obviously not an Ethereum blockchain, but I think what they do is very interesting, and their approach is very fascinating. So Aleo is a layer 1 blockchain, passed a governance proposal. Their ecosystem passed a governance proposal and said, hey, we are a privacy blockchain. And so we need to define and enforce some best practices for our bridges. Not for the blockchain as a whole, but we as an ecosystem believe that bridges should be taking some certain best practices. They didn't say exactly what you have to do. They said, here are some things, take some set of them and do that. And so this included basically time delays, 24 to 72 hours before bridging, a limit in the amount that can be bridged in any given day or any given transaction, screening against high-risk addresses, right, such as sanctions and addresses involved in major exploits. They said if you want, you could do KYC, really up to you. But the main thing was they said, hey, we have to have at least some shared view that we need some best practices for our ecosystem. And I think it's a really interesting approach, right? They as an ecosystem passed a governance proposal. It's a much more decentralized mechanism of doing this. And so all of those bridges then use predicate to be able to enforce different requirements such as these. Perhaps not all of them, but a subset of them. Then the last one is when we go to some of the more institutional use cases. And so then we start thinking about identity, right? Identity is tricky because we have traditional KYC, KYB systems, but then we also have really where I think the world should be going, which is zero knowledge identity, right? Zero knowledge identity ensures that we as people have custody and control over our own personal data without it being out in the world. The challenge, of course, is not every institution today is comfortable with that. So we have to think about how we accelerate that forward. How can we have zero knowledge solutions sit alongside traditional systems abstract that away, that over time we continue to position zero-knowledge identity to be able to replace traditional identity solutions. And that's really how we've been approaching this, is that you can actually aggregate across multiple solutions simultaneously for a more unified verification. I'll give an example of this shortly. You have a front-end experience that allows a user to go through whatever process they have, whether that's getting a ZK identity solution or going through traditional KYC, and then immediately being routed back to what they need to do. So what I'm emphasizing here is the need for seamless UX experience, right? Like it has to be seamless. That is a big break-off point for most financial systems, is any changes in the user experience halts activity. And you can see that drop off. You can say, there's 1,000 people coming in. Oh, they got blocked here. You see a 20% drop off. You see a 30% drop off. We can't allow that to happen. We have to ensure the best UX possible. And then the last one, of course, is enforcing these requirements at a smart contract level, such that if something isn't met, it's rejected. So I'm sure many of you saw the Aztec, the Aztec token sale. So this is exactly what we do there. So if you go to Aztec, there's two flows. You can choose to use ZK Passport, which has a fully zero-knowledge identity solution. But if you're someone in a market who doesn't have an NFC chip in their passport, or don't have a passport, or your passport's NFC chip isn't working, or perhaps you're not able to download ZK Passport, we also have a more traditional KYC approach. And then, of course, for KYB, which is for businesses who need to participate, zero-knowledge identity doesn't currently offer a solution there. So really what we've done is we've given users choice on which direction they want to go through. All of this is unified, right? So from a user standpoint, they can choose what they want, and these are still enforced by predicate. In addition to that, we have some additional components that are integrated on the back end. But again, it's about a unified experience in which people don't realize, or people have the ability to choose what they want to do. And from a technical standpoint, it's all the same unified experience. And really, this is where we see the world, is that organizations need to think about a holistic set of rules, whatever that is, right? Whether that is they're a financial institution in Europe that has to think about MiCA, whether they're a payment system in Latin America that has to think about payments across different countries in the region. There's a holistic set of business, legal, and regulatory requirements that they all have to consider. And so that is a multitude of not just AML, not just KYC, but things such as rate limits, security, geolocation. All these really matter. And this is crucial when we think about the scaling of Ethereum. And then the last part, of course, is can't leave a presentation without talking about AI. When we think about an agentic economy, when we think about transactions across AI agents, you will need to ensure that your AI agent behaves in the manner that you want it to behave, right? How do you ensure that it does the things you want it to do? And so last, I wanted to end with this, is we're finalizing a paper with Inco on compliant privacy. And so really the purpose of the paper is there are so many different approaches to compliance, and it really is a tricky thing to figure out, right? Like, how should I be building privacy, and how should I be building compliance? And there's a lot of different ways to do it. And so the purpose of the paper is we present a framework for different styles, and it includes a number of different case studies for many organizations that do it, not just the ones I mentioned, but I think other great examples are privacy pools by Oxbow and Ameen Soleimani. Railgun also has an excellent approach to this. So there's many, many different styles, layers, and forms to it. And there's, of course, many different types of privacy use cases, many different types of privacy, fully anonymous, confidential, public, of course, or pseudo-anonymous. And so really, the purpose of this paper is how can we make that a little bit easier to understand for organizations and developers. And so with that, I'll be around for the rest of the morning and early afternoon. If you're interested in learning more about the paper, anything we do, happy to talk further. So with that, thank you very much.